Hello and welcome, and this is Peter. The very first thing I'd like to say is thank you very much for listening to my audio. I really appreciate you, so thank you for listening. Today's audio is about the struggle. The struggle was real, right? The struggle for me to go from technology guy up to salesman. Okay? So in this audio, I'm going to talk about, a little bit about my background in IT, etc. So you get a feel for who I am. And then my crossover to selling in 1990. And then the successes and failures I had along the way, and the way in which I was trying to learn how to be a salesman along the way, right? And the reason that I want to take you through this background, and this audio is really just background, you just want to listen to it while you're driving to work or whatever one day. I want you to hear this background because I want you to know the struggle is real. And I want you to know that most of us, the best of us, struggle at becoming good business intelligence salesmen. We struggle. It's tough. Okay? And the guys out there who've already made it, the vast majority of them, they're not going to share their tricks with you, because why would a good salesman want to create his own competitors, right? So you're not going to get these sort of lessons from a great business intelligence salesman in your community, most likely, because why would he want to create competitors unless, of course, he owns a company and he's trying to groom a salesman for his company in the future. Now, the trouble with grooming good salesmen for your company in the future is sometimes you create your own competitors, and that indeed happened with me and IBM. But all that aside, I want you to understand that today, if you're failing to win deals, if you're being given, if you're a relatively young guy, so most of the people who would likely listen to this are people who are relatively young guys who want to one day become a business intelligence salesman, and their company is giving them some small deals to go and chase, to cut their teeth, learn their trade. And so you may be getting given, like I was at IBM, you may be being given some $100,000 deals to go chase, to go practice on, because $100,000 deals doesn't matter whether you lose it, right? It really just doesn't matter whether you lose it. If you're working in any sort of sizable company, $100,000 is neither here nor there. Okay, like in IBM, your average customer had we had a $10 million quota for our average sort of customers, so winning or losing a $100,000 deal is neither here nor there. So you might be in that position. You might be a young guy who's aspiring to becoming a great business intelligence salesman one day, and being given some opportunities by your company and struggling to close them. Or you might be a guy running your own small BI company, and in the sell-do bind, where you got to sell something and do it, and sell something and do it, and wondering, how do I break out of the sell-do bind? How do I win enough deals that I can hire a professional services manager to come on board and train my people, and know that I'm going to have enough deals on the table to keep everyone fed? You may be in that position, right? Which was my position in the mid-90s when I founded my company. There was just me and my company, and the question was, how can I grow my company past just me and win enough deals to keep food on the table for everyone? And I never accomplished that. I never did that, right? So, if you're in that position, that's what this audio is about. This audio is to basically empathize with you and share with you that the struggle is real. It is tough. It is hard. It is demoralizing. In some cases, it's even heartbreaking. And I want to tell you those stories from my past, some of the more tragic deals that I lost and how I reacted, because I want you to know that the struggle was real, and that I understand that struggle, and I understand how tough it is, and I can help you overcome those struggles. I can help you be the very best business intelligence salesman you can be. And let me assure you, if you follow through on all this, you will be a very good business intelligence salesman. I can absolutely guarantee you that, right? So let's start. My first BI deal started at Easter in 1991, and it was with a company called the MLC, who's now been bought out by the National Australia Bank in Australia. And I'd just been assigned to the account, and a friend of mine, actually my wife's manager, was going to do a presentation on this software called Metaphor, which is now legendary. It was a company founded by Ralph Kimball, so everyone in BI knows who Ralph Kimball is. Well, Metaphor was a company that he founded that was acquired by IBM in the 80s. And this presentation was done. The customer said, yeah, let's do it. And having just been assigned to the account, I got the job of building the first data warehouse in the country using this Metaphor software. And oh my God, it was a disaster. Oh my God, it was terrible. We had 3 months to prove that we could do what my friend presented on the whiteboard, and we couldn't do it. Quite frankly, we couldn't do it. And so I was pretty disappointed. But what I did is, of course, being an IT guy, I built a third normal form data warehouse. And the problem back then, remembering this is 1991, was that the customer had 1 million customers and 1.1 million enforced policies, and customers had roles on policies. So you had a big customer table, a big policy table, and the role table was about 6 point something million. And to do any analysis, you had to join the customer to the policy through the role. So every question scanned those 3 tables, right? And in 1991, scanning those tables, that was expensive. That was about 1,000 CPU seconds and 400 Australian dollars every time you asked a question. And at the end of the 3 months, when we were doing the review for the project, basically the customer said, we really like what this software is able to do, but it's just too damned expensive. We can't afford to pay $400 every time we want to ask a question. So you guys at IBM have to figure that out. Like we can't figure it out. That's your job. So we're not going to buy this thing off you. Well, it costs $400 to ask a question. So I was stuck with the job of how do I get the third normal form. That's how you build databases, right? It was written in stone in the 1980s. And how do I get this thing to run faster? So I went around to everybody who were experts in DB2, and they all went, no, you've done exactly what you're supposed to do. We don't know how to make this thing go any faster. And so I was faced with the problem of I had to invent a new way of building databases to get the response times that we wanted. And so I did that. And 3 months later, we got the average query down to sub-second and 95% of queries done in less than 10 seconds. 99% of queries less than 10 seconds, about 95% of queries under 3 seconds. So now it was costing them more like $1 for a question rather than $400. And so they said at the end of that 3 months, they said, okay, great, this is really good, we like it. We are now able to answer the questions that we want to ask in a very reasonable amount of money. And so great. Now what we want is we want to use the system for 3 months before we decide whether we buy it or not. And I'm like, oh God, are these guys ever going to pay for this thing, right? And eventually in December, they signed the order, paid for everything, and took me to lunch. And the guy who took me to lunch is younger than me, actually. His name was Greg. And he said, took me to a very nice lunch, actually. And he said, I'd like to thank you for all your hard work for the year. He said, I know that you worked over and above what's normal and what's expected, because I did. And I'm buying you a nice lunch to say thank you. And I said to him, like a good IBMer, I asked him the question, this system, you just paid $300,000 plus the disk for this system. And I'd like to know, how did you cost justify it? We're interested, obviously, in selling this to other customers. So how did you cost justify it? And he said, well, this system, the $300,000, we've already made more than that money out of having this system. So literally we're giving you back some of the money that we've already made. So it's easily well cost justified because we've already made that money. And I'm like, you've made $300,000 profit out of this system? And he went, yeah. He said, in fact, a lot more, which is why you're getting a lunch in this restaurant. And it was a very nice restaurant, I can tell you. I'm like, really? I'm like, well, how did you do that? And he said, well, I can't tell you how we did that because you work for IBM and your obvious interest is to sell this system to other people. I said, that's your obvious interest. And I went, well, yeah. He said, so we're not going to tell you anything that is going to help you sell this system to anybody else. They are going to have to figure it out for themselves. And I went, that's remarkably fair. I'm not happy, but that's remarkably fair. I can't argue your point. He says, no, of course you can't argue my point. Enjoy your lunch. Enjoy your lunch. You've worked really hard. You've earned it. This has been a success. And everyone's happy. And I was like, okay, well, this selling thing's not too hard. I just sold, through all this work, $300,000 worth of stuff. Maybe it's not so hard, I thought naively at the end of 1991. And I figured that, I could just take this system and tell people in other insurance companies, the MLC really love it and they made a lot of money out of it. So you should get with it and try it out as well. But you're going to have to figure it out for yourselves because obviously, MLC is not going to tell us what they did with it. We can just tell you that they use it and that they like it, right? Yes, well, selling didn't turn out to be quite that simple, right? And my deal in 1992, my big deal that came to conclusion was Johnson & Johnson. So you all know who Johnson & Johnson is. They make all the baby powder and shampoos and all this sort of stuff. Very big consumer packaged goods company, right? So I'm sitting there one day at my desk and I get this phone call from the CIO of Johnson & Johnson. And I'm like, hello? And he says, yes, I'm so-and-so. I believe, is this Peter Nolan I'm talking to from IBM? And I said, yeah. And he said, we have a situation over here. We've spoken to the account manager. We've spoken to, the account manager has spoken to your manager. And you are on secondment to us for the next period. We'd like you to come over and have a chat with us. We want to ask you some questions, find out about your background a little bit, and this is the meeting time that we've got available. And I'm like, what? Like what? and he says, don't worry, everything's taken care of. I'm like, okay. So it's the next day I had this meeting, and I went over for this meeting, and I met with the CIO and the director of marketing. And I met with the CIO first, and he's asking me all these questions about my background, my knowledge, etc., etc. And, I just answered honestly. And then the director of marketing comes in, and the CIO kind of nods. So obviously they had some agreement. And the director of marketing says, we want you to do some research work first. We want you to understand that there's been a sort of non-disclosure agreement put in place, which really surprised me because IBM doesn't sign them. And you're not to disclose anything that we talk about here. And I'm like, of course not. And so like this is 1992, so fair enough to disclose some of this stuff now. And so he says, we have a problem. Yeah. And he said, you understand that we make sanitary napkins for women? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm married. So, yeah, I know you guys make that stuff. And he goes, fine, good, you're married, you understand. I'm like, yeah, I understand. And says, the fact is that sales are falling for our sanitary napkins. And we don't know why. And we, over the last 2 years, have done everything we can to find out why our sales for sanitary napkins are falling, and we can't figure it out. And we think, he said, I'm from the UK, we had this metaphor system in the UK, and I think that a competent operator of this metaphor system might be able to figure out why our sales are falling. And if we can figure out why our sales are falling, then maybe we can do something about it. That's what you're here for. Because we are told you are a competent operator of this metaphor system. And I'm looking at this guy like, well, yes, I am a competent operator of the metaphor system. But, obviously, I don't know anything about sanitary napkins or that marketplace. I said, yes, I'm married. I have a wife who does use your products, by the way, but that doesn't give me any insight into that marketplace. I said, literally, I know nothing about your marketplace. Yes, we understand that you would know nothing about our marketplace. And I said to him, but his name was John. I said, but surely, John, I mean, you guys live, eat, and breathe this stuff. You've got the best people like Johnson & Johnson. You've got the best people in the world who understand these marketplaces and understand the impact of advertising and how to build ads and all the rest of it. You guys are like, you Procter & Gamble, you guys are world leaders at this. He went, yes, and we can't figure out what the problem is. I said, but, in all honesty and humility here, John, if you guys can't figure out what the problem is, I sincerely doubt that I can figure out what the problem is with my complete lack of understanding and knowledge of this market segment. I do insurance, I do finance, not women's sanitary products. And he's like, yeah, we know, but we think you can do it. We think you might be able to figure this out. And I said to him, well, look, as long as you understand that I'm telling you right up front, I have no understanding of this market space, none whatsoever. You're going to have to teach me something about that. As long as you understand that I sincerely doubt my ability to do what it is that you're asking me to do, I will do my best, but I sincerely doubt my ability to do this. And John said, well, that's fine. You're being honest. You're telling us exactly what you think, but we think you can do it. And we'll give you the knowledge and the help and the understanding that you need to get this job done. I'm like, okay. and so on we went. I bought my little system over, and we were using DB2 on a PC on a large server. And we started gathering all this data from a variety of different places to get it into a database, all through writing COBOL programs, right? So literally we were going around Johnson & Johnson, interviewing people, scouring around for what data have you got that might be applicable to this problem. Could you give it to us and we'll put it into this database and we'll see what we can see, right? So I was there, from early morning to late night for about 2 months. And we combined a wide variety of information into this little prototype data warehouse. And we just I was just searching and doing this work. And one of the problems, of course, back in those days was timing issues, because there was no scanner data in those days. There was the only data you would get. The data you could get on sales was warehouse movements, because there were accurate numbers for warehouse movements. But once the pallet of product moved out of the warehouse, you had no idea when it was actually sold, and you only had Nielsen estimates for sales for yourself and your competitors, and then you had Nielsen data for the advertising spend that Nielsen was observing in the marketplace, etc., via the different media mechanisms and all the rest of it. So we were putting all this advertising dollars spend, warehouse movements, estimated sales from Nielsen, and then our own advertising and sales information that we had, and trying to figure all this out. But of course all this has different timings. So a lot of it we were trying to do calculations on time to figure out when these things happened and what the impact was, right? So I'm sitting there, literally, I'm there about 1 o'clock in the morning one night, and finally, these things come together, and I spot what's going on, right? I figure out what's going on. Took like 8 weeks of hard work to figure out what was going on, to get the 2 or 3 charts that told you what was going on. And what was going on was one of their competitors was jumping into the marketplace, spending like $1 million in advertising in a single month, and then giving their product a big boost, and then exiting the advertising space for 2 months, and then jumping back in after 3 months. And they calculated when the fall of the boost from the prior advertising started becoming effective, and they would hit it again as their sales started to fall, and that would give them the next boost. So their chart looked like a little bit of a wave, where it would go up and then down a bit, then bottom out, then go up and down a bit and bottom out, but the overall trend was up. And in contrast, the Johnson & Johnson sales, when their competitor, their major competitor, was hitting the advertising hard, their sales would dip down and then recover in the period of the competitor being out of the advertising market. And Johnson & Johnson was spending in those days $300,000 a month on advertising their product. So, in consumer packaged goods, it was absolute mantra that you had a level advertising spend, a sustained level advertising spend. There was an absolute mantra that you spent the same amount of money through different channels every month to retain awareness of your product, to stimulate purchasing. That was an absolute mantra. It's like, that's just part of the furniture around here. But this competitor was jumping in with $1 million each quarter and then exiting, which was very unusual behavior. But it had the impact, it was the same amount of advertising money that Johnson & Johnson was spending, but it had the impact of driving up their sales and suppressing Johnson & Johnson's sales. That was because they were jumping into the market so heavily. So I left an email with John and said, I found what's going on, and I'll be back in your office at 9 o'clock. This is like 2 o'clock in the morning. I left the message. So I'll be back in your office at 9 o'clock, and I'll show you exactly what's going on if you're available at that time. And so I'm there at 9 o'clock in the morning, sitting outside his office with a cheesy big grin on my face. And he comes in from his racquetball. He used to play racquetball, so he'd come straight from racquetball, hadn't even had his shower yet. He's like, yep, come in my office, show me what you got. And I go into his office, and I go through all these charts, and I say to him, John, what your competitor has done is they've cracked the algorithm for how much money should we dump into the advertising market, for how long, and then for how long should we leave it before we come back in and do it again. They've cracked the algorithm for doing that and having increase in sales, being successful in increasing sales doing that, rather than having a flat advertising spend. So basically what they've done is innovate the idea of how their advertising money should be spent. Same amount of money, right? You can see it's the same amount of money. They didn't increase their advertising spend. They just changed how they're doing their advertising. And you guys have got flat advertising spend, and that's how they're beating you. And he looked at this, and he looked at me, and he says, but Peter, we've been working on that for years. We at Johnson & Johnson have been working on improving our advertising spend for years. Nobody can figure out what you just talked about. Nobody can do it. And I said, John, look at the charts. We just did it. Literally, we just did that. And he looked at me, and he's like, you're right. You have just figured out that's what they're doing. I said, yep, here's all the proof. I said, now these are just the top level charts. I'll take your guys through it in detail and show them what they're doing. And he says, okay, go grab, Fred, Jim, and whatever, the 3 guys that I was working with, and go grab these guys, take them through this soup to nuts, show them everything you've done. If they agree with you, if they look at what you've done, the detailed calculations, etc., and they look at what you've done, and they say to me, yep, Peter's right in this, we're on. right? He said, you got to go talk to these guys. And so we went off and we spent like 2 or 3 days together. And we went through everything, right? And I'm like, yes. This is we're going to get this deal. So then what happened was John, this was just for the advertising marketing. But John was the managing director of Johnson & Johnson Australia, New Zealand. He was a sponsor and he was the managing director. So he said, he had a meeting with me one day and he says, Pete, I know that we're only asked you over here to do this piece of analysis for advertising, but I want to roll this out across the company. I want all our analysts to have this metaphor system. And what I want you to do is I want you to work with my guys over here, and I want you to build a product category analysis package. So, the rep and I will take care of it. I want you to build this product analysis package as a prototype, and I want you to be prepared to come and do a presentation to the board. I'll do the speaking, you'll do the driving, you won't talk. You'll drive the system and I'll do the speaking. I want to do a presentation to the board. The next board meeting's in 4 weeks' time. And I want to ask the board for money at that board meeting, I want to ask them for money to equip all our analysts with this software. And I'm like, yes, this is going to be big. This is going to be a big deal. So I'm sitting down with the rep and we're crunching the numbers. It comes up $500,000, right? For 30 desktops. We're going to be 30 desktops, database servers, work to put it all together, about $500,000. And I'm like, yes, we're going to get this deal. So I build this prototype, and John's got the proposal from us for $500,000. And so we build this prototype, and what we did, we had an hour with the board where we brought in the different category managers and we ran through the category management product status reports and things that were built as prototype. So John said at the front, some of these numbers may not be exactly correct because this is a prototype. This is not the real thing, right? But I'm showing you what you could have. I'm showing you, the board members, what we could have to run this company with. And this product was just used to solve our single biggest problem that we've had in this company for 2 years. So, and he ran through, he had like half a dozen of these product managers come in and out. Some left very happy, some left knowing they were not going to have a job after Christmas. That was kind of how that went. And at the end, John turned around to all the board members and said, right, this thing that we're asking for, this is going to cost us $500,000. Our friends at IBM are going to charge us $500,000 to put this thing into production. Then they'll probably charge us some support money, etc. But the budget is guaranteed. They can't go over. It's a fixed price deal. It's $500,000. What I want from you gentlemen here is a show of hands. Can I have the $500,000 to implement into production for 30 of our analysts exactly what you saw on the screen today? And all the board members' hands went up. And I'm sitting there going, oh, yes. This is my first significant deal. $500,000, Johnson & Johnson. This is going to be great. And so I'm really happy, right? I'm really happy. And so all the board members have said yes. I said, okay, great. So the rep comes over with the CIO. She signs all the contracts. They get everything done and dusted. Everything's ready to go. And by now, it's like 2 weeks before Christmas, right? This is December. It's like 2, maybe 3 weeks. It's like the first or second week of December, right, by now. And this is my deal for the year. This is the one deal where the customer's bitten. They liked it. They've tried it. They think it's great. And the managing director of Johnson & Johnson stood up in front of the board and asked them for $500,000, and they said yes for my little analysis system. And I'm sitting at my desk, and this is no joke, gentlemen. I'm sitting at my desk, and Tim, the CIO, calls me and says, Pete, I have some bad news for you. I said, really, Tim? What bad news do you have? He said, the deal's off. You need to come and collect all your things. And I would like to have a meeting with you once you've collected your things. And I'm like, What? He said, the deal is off, Pete. It's like, I'm like, how can the deal be off? He said, come over and we'll have a meeting in my office, and I'd like to talk to you face to face. Because you've done great work, you've put in a lot of effort, so I feel like I should talk to you face to face. And he had the guy that I've been working, the project manager that I've been working with, was in his office as well. Named guy called Sam, great guy. And so I get into Tim's office and I'm saying, Tim, what? I don't understand what this is about. The contracts are signed. And my understanding is this is going forward. I mean, I was there at the board meeting, remember? And Tim says, look, Pete, I really feel for you. I feel sorry for you. You have made a great effort. I have written a letter back to your account manager, which I'm sure will finish up on your manager's desk. You have done exemplary work. You have literally found something that we could not find for ourselves. Found something in 8 weeks that we could not find for ourselves in 2 years. Your work is exemplary, and we want to say that, and we want to say thank you for the work that you've done. You've done a great job. And I said, Tim, I really appreciate that. And I understand that. I really appreciate it. But that's kind of hard to take if you're telling me the deal's off. And I'd really like to know why the deal is off. And he said, well, quite frankly, it's got nothing to do with you. He said, we going forward, we don't want OS2 in our environment. We want Windows in our environment. And your product is an OS2 only product. So it has come down to the decision that we don't want OS2 in our environment. And I'm like, with all respect, Tim, you've got to be kidding me. The value of this system far outweighs the cost of, going outside the standards just a little bit for OS2. And I said to him, what has John said about this? John's the managing director. What's his position on this project being cancelled? And he said, well, I thought you'd ask me that because John's been promoted. He's moving to the US and he's handling a division in the US. And won't be back for some years. So John is obviously a supporter of this system, but he's not here anymore. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I said, the managing director is being transferred. What a way to lose a deal. And so I'm sitting there like, okay. See, I can take my knocks. And I said to Tim, okay, I guess, I'm very disappointed, and and I'm sure you understand I'm disappointed, but we just have to take these things on the chin, and I'll clear my things out, and maybe one day in the future we'll do business again. Clearly I'm disappointed. Thank you for the opportunity of working with you. Thank you for the opportunity to bid on this or to present this. And maybe one day in the future we'll work together on this again. And Tim's like, he didn't say it. It was like, well done, young man. You've taken it on the chin. And because Tim was like 20 years older than me, so you're taking it on the chin. It's not your fault. I know how sad you feel. And you've said maybe we'll do business again one day, right? So I did all the right IBM things, but I was really sad, really crushed. So I took all this gear back to my desk at IBM, just dumped it all there, and went home and got drunk for like 3 days. And after like 3 days, like, gentlemen, this was like either the first or second week of December. This deal got cancelled. It was my one deal for the year. And sure, it was only $500,000, but it was my one deal for the year. And I went over to the rep. Her name was Anne. I went over to the rep and I said, do you know this deal's been cancelled? And she said, yeah, I know. John called me. And she said, you've got a glowing review from Tim from the CIO. I've got his letter here regarding you. Said you've got a glowing review. You've done great work. They're very impressed. And I said, but Anne, is there any way to save this deal? And she said, what? You think I should get Johnson & Johnson to buy something that the CIO doesn't want? Says, no. When Tim says, I'm not buying that from you, I'm not going to argue the point. They're Johnson & Johnson. I went, okay, well, I got to ask because I'm very disappointed. And she says, yeah, I can understand you're disappointed. So after these discussions and leaving my things, I just went home and got drunk for about 3 days. And my manager, Maggie, called me on the Friday and says to me, so Peter, are you coming back to work? What's your situation? And I said to her, Maggie, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure I'm coming back. And she said, why? I said, I'm a failure. I failed. I just can't sell this stuff. And right now I feel very much like a failure. That this is just not me. I'm just not going to make it. She said, oh, okay. I can understand that you feel really upset. So she said, tell you what. Come in to my office on Monday. She gave me a time in the afternoon. Just come into my office after lunch. No need to, just casual. Just come in for a meeting just with me. And I'd just like to have a chat with you. Would you please come and have a chat with me? And I went, yeah, sure. You're my manager. I'm being paid. He said, sure, I'll come in and have a chat. So I had the weekend. And then I went in on the Monday. I sobered up on the Sunday. And I went in on the Monday to have a chat with Maggie. And she's like, tell me how you feel. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me how you feel. And I said to her, I'm just gutted. So I can't believe that this deal is dead. I'm really upset about it. But more than upset about it, we had everything on this deal. Everything worked. We did, we found out something that these guys didn't know. We had the support of the managing director. We had every member of the board vote for this deal and say, yeah, we want it. And then we have the CIO saying, well, we don't want OS2. Like we lose a deal for $500,000 because there's 30 desktops that are OS2 rather than Windows. This is why we lose this deal. It's like, are you kidding me? I'm really. And it's like, and they didn't say this up front. Like, this system is only OS2 because it's an IBM system. Tim didn't say right up front, no, don't go through the process of using this thing because we're not going to let it into the company because it's OS2. They didn't just tell us that up front. I'm really upset. And so I said, but more than that, if I can get everything lined up like this, if I can get this amount of support for a deal, and I know it's only a small deal in IBM terms, but it's the biggest deal I've ever worked on. If I can get all this lined up for a deal and then lose it, what does that say about me? Right? What does it say about my ability to sell something? I can't even sell this. I was saying to look, we had every member of the board put his hand up and say, yes, we want this system. We want to spend the $500,000. And I lose a deal from there. And, I'm told it's not really my fault. So, it's hard to see. It's not my fault. It's hard to see, why didn't I ask the question, is OS2 acceptable to you, Tim, up front, which I should have asked now in retrospect. And I just feel really bad. And so I did that whole, my heart just bled for the first half of that meeting, gentlemen. And then Maggie gave me a pep talk, a lecture. And this is December 1992, gentlemen. Maggie said to me, look, Peter, I've spoken with the account managers that you work with, and they think you are just great. Said, Yeah, you're young, you're inexperienced, but for your age and for your experience, these account managers are giving you great reviews. They, every single one of them believes that you're going to make it one day. You haven't made it today, but every one of them is telling me you're going to make it one day. You are going to be a salesman one day. You are going to be a great salesman one day. Because you've got everything you need. You just need to work at it. And I'm like, oh, Maggie, like today, I can tell you today, I'm not really in the frame of mind of coming back next year and working on this. I'm not really in that frame of mind. So I've worked all this year. I've worked for a whole year, and I've got nothing to show for it. Literally, nothing to show for it. So, we come from software development. In software development, you work for a year, you've got something to show for it. You've got the software you developed to show for it. Have you got the progress on the project that you're doing to show for it? So I've never in my life have I worked so hard for a whole year and got nothing at the end to show for it. It's just soul destroying. And she looked at me and she said, yeah, this is what selling is. This is selling. In selling, you can work hard for a whole year. You can do brilliant work, exemplary work, and you can come away with nothing. That's selling. I said, Peter, if you can't handle it, maybe you do need to get out. But you can handle it. You're tough enough. You're strong enough. You're good enough. You can handle it, and you are going to be a great salesman one day. I know it. She said, I've been here in IBM for 20 years. I've seen them all come and go over the years. You are one of the best. You're not the best, but you're really in good company. You, Peter, you are going to make it. I'm like, oh, I don't know, Maggie. And she just said, well, tell you what, go home, spend time with your lovely wife, your new little baby. We just, at that time, December 92, we had our first little baby, and our second one was on the way. And Maggie knew that our second one was on the way. I knew that our second one was on the way. And she was like, well, go home and spend time with your wife and your baby and talk with Jennifer, because she'd met her, talk with Jennifer and talk it over between yourselves. And come back in the new year and tell me what you think. Tell me what you're going to do. I went, okay, that's fair enough. That's a fair enough question. Fair enough request. So I took my annual leave. I just took annual leave from then to the early new year. And because there was no point, literally there was no point going to the office. I had a lot of annual leave stored up. There was no point at all me going to the office because I was just too depressed. That would just be, bringing the tone of the office down. So I spent some time with Jennifer and we talked about it. And she said, your dream is to be a salesman one day. Keep at it. Just keep at it. And she said, with this deal, you got that close. You got so close with this deal. And this was a great deal. And you lost it at the end through no fault of your own. Just keep at it. Just keep doing it. You'll make it one day. Right? So she was supportive and Maggie was supportive and my reps and those guys were supportive. So, gentlemen, I went back in 1993. But I can tell you that Christmas 1992, if you are a young man who wants to become a great business intelligence salesman one day, and you've had failures and you've had losses and they seem soul destroying and they seem like I'll just never ever be a good salesman, this is just never ever going to work, I just keep losing the deals that I'm chasing. If you feel like that, I want you to remember what it was like, or I want you to know and understand what it was like for me in that Christmas 1992 when everything had gone right. Everything was the perfect sale of this data warehousing system to Johnson & Johnson. Everything was right. except they wanted Windows and not OS2. And they didn't say so up front because presumably they figured that, hey, we'll never have to buy this thing anyway. They'll never figure this out. We'll never have to, the question will never come up, right? I presume that's what actually happened. So, gentlemen, I want you to know that that was just soul destroying. I was just like, oh, you got to be kidding me. They didn't buy this thing? You've got to be kidding me, right? And it was a really tough time that Christmas. And if you've ever been there, if you know what that's like, gentlemen, I've been there. I've been there. I know and I understand. And I can help you overcome those sorts of things, and I can help you go out and get your deals. Okay? So this audio, what did I want to share with you in this audio? In this audio, what I wanted to share with you is that when I was starting out trying to learn how to sell, I had a relatively good success in my first project, and I thought it was going to be pretty easy to sell this metaphor thing. And then the next year I had this deal with Johnson & Johnson that everything went right on it. Everything went well on it right until the end where John was transferred out of the country off to the US on his career path, and the deal was taken off the table because Johnson & Johnson wanted Windows and not OS2. And I was really shattered, really upset. Okay? That's what this audio is about. This audio is about letting you know that I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt and stubby holder of losing, early in my sales career, losing what looked like a done deal and being really crushed by it, and then having to come back again the next year. Okay? I've been there. I know what it's like. It's tough. You hate it, right? But what I would say to you, if you're there, if you're in that position now, if you're in that position today, where you're going for deals and you're losing them, I know what that's like, and I can help you through that, right? And I can get you up to the point of what I described in a prior audio of just winning deal after deal after deal after deal, just going out and crushing it. And let me assure you, that's a really good feeling. Okay? One of the things about selling is you have higher highs and lower lows than in something like software development. Software development, it takes a very long time to get something into production and see the result of it. In selling, but you are pretty much assured of a result. In selling, you can work really hard and get absolutely nothing at the other end, except a nice proposal. You get some experience and a nice proposal. Okay? So with that, gentlemen, that's what I wanted to convey in this audio, that I know and I understand what it's like to work really hard and get really close and still lose the deal. Okay? I understand what that's like, and I know how hard it is to get up the next day and go, okay, now we're going to go do all that again. All right? I know and I understand. So with that, gentlemen, I'd like to say thank you very much for listening, and bye for now.